I understand that too.
And therefore I left the party. And by the time I wanted to return to the party in order to be able to vote for Trump in the Republican primary, the deadline had passed. I didn't realize that. So there was no point in going through the exercise. And therefore I'm sitting out here as a registered libertarian. They, of course, have a U.S. Senate nomination, and they're on the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
If I had something to say at that point, I might do so.
Okay.
I think that operatives who run for political office have a bad history, so it's not sure it's the greatest idea in the world, but I consider it. I'd rather write more books.
Okay. Well, Bill, you do that. And if you still have Donald Trump's ear, which you say you do, please talk some sense into him and tell him drain the swamp means drain the swamp. And if he'd actually...
Well, one of the things that is concerned me enormously is this idea put forward by Sean Spicer, which I'm hoping...
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for another episode of The Liars and the Cover-Ups. When we last checked in with the White House, the Trump minions were working feverishly to provide some cover for the president's idiotic tweets alleging his predecessor wiretapped his glass tower communications. Calls for House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes to step down are now coming from some in his own party. But some of his colleagues are showing just how far they'll bend over for the orange one. Ted Yoho, congressman from the state of Florida.
Are you concerned at all that he was viewing what he said was classified information at the White House, then reported it back to the White House?
Well, you got to keep in mind who he works for. He works for the president. He answers to the president.
Does he, or does he work for the constituents of his district?
Well, you do both, but when you're in that capacity, if you've got information, I'm okay with what he did.
Meanwhile, actual news organizations' investigations are getting to the bottom of what happened.
A new report from the New York Times raises serious questions as to whether the White House is actively interfering with the House intelligence probe into Russian election interference. The Times reports that it was not one, but two White House officials who gave Republican House Chair and friend of the White House, Devin Nunes, intelligence information in what seems to be an attempt to use the chairman's investigation not to do oversight over this White House, not to investigate Russian interference in our election. No, rather to use the House Intelligence Committee investigation to support Donald Trump's baseless conspiracy theory that President Obama wiretapped Trump Tower.
But wait! There's more!
And breaking late tonight, the Washington Post is now reporting that at least 3 senior White House officials were involved in sharing intelligence documents with Devin Nunes. The Post names Ezra Cohen-Watnick and Michael Ellis, but it also names the top lawyer for the National Security Council, John Eisenberg.
But the official spokesperson of the White House won't have any of it. When asked about the latest reports, Sean Spicer accused journalists doing their jobs of obsessing over questions they never even asked while trying to deflect from the questions they did ask.
I've commented on this both yesterday and today, that your obsession with who talked to whom and when is not the answer here. It should be the substance. In the same way that when you guys print a story with 18 anonymous sources, your obsession is the substance. It seems now that you continue to look at it from a backwards prism, which is, what happened, who drove in what gate, who did they meet with, what were they wearing that day, as opposed to what's the underlying substance of this. Did something happen in the 2016 election? Did leaks occur? We are not going to engage actively in that kind of leaking that has been a problem.
And then he proved that the White House has no intention of giving actual information to the journalists who show up for the briefing each day.
Told us that you're willing to look into and ask questions about the process and provide us answers.
No. Please don't put words in my mouth. I never said I would provide you answers. I said we would look into it.
Huh? Why do they even bother anymore? While the House Intelligence Committee investigating Russian interference in the 2016 elections imploded, thanks Devin, the Senate's Intel Committee opened its hearings with a bang.
Part of the reason active measures have worked in this U.S. election is because the commander-in-chief has used Russian active measures at time against his opponents. After a debunked insurrection...
When you say his, who's his?
Paul Manafort, cited the fake Incirlik story as a terrorist attack on CNN, and he used it as a talking point. President Trump stood on a stage and cited what appears to be a fake news story from Sputnik News that disappeared from the internet. He denies the intel from the United States about Russia. He claimed that the election could be rigged. That was the number one theme pushed by RT, Sputnik News, white outlets all the way up until the election. He's made claims of voter fraud, that President Obama is not a citizen, that Congressman Cruz is not a citizen. So part of the reason active measures works, and it does today in terms of Trump Tower being wiretapped, is because they parrot the same lines.
Cyber expert Clint Watts, with credentials too numerous to list here, explained the difference between hacking and influencing.
You can hack stuff and be covert, but you can't influence and be covert. You have to ultimately show your hand. And that's why we've been able to discover it online.
And then things got real.
There's a disproportionate number of fake news outlets, conspiratorial websites that are English-speaking editors that are pro-Russian, trained in Russia sometimes. How are they funded? That would be one component. My hypothesis, working in the intelligence field, is that there is some sort of Russian intel asset that is funding them in one way or another through some sort of scheme. The other part that I think we should be looking at is follow the trail of dead Russians. There's been more dead Russians in the past 3 months that are tied to this investigation who have assets in banks all over the world. They are dropping dead even in Western countries. These are all huge openings to understand how they are funded by the Russian government. I don't have the capability to do that from where I sit, but I think that's a huge angle.
All righty then. But if that's not enough intrigue for you, there was more breaking news on Thursday.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Michael Flynn, Donald Trump's former national security advisor, has told the FBI and congressional officials investigating the Trump campaign's potential ties to Russia that he is willing to be interviewed in exchange for a grant of immunity from prosecution.
I seem to recall Michael Flynn saying something about people who are given immunity.
When you are given immunity, that means that you've probably committed a crime.
Well, I'm guilty.
And that's today's dose of Nicole Sandler's What's News. Hear Nicole's show Tuesday through Friday from 3 to 4 Eastern at NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Mary had a little lamb. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Tremendous! Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
You bastard. You know, girls, it's great to live in a democracy today, where freedom is everywhere.
Everywhere.
But girls, we often take this freedom for granted.
We do.
Freedom of speech.
That.
Freedom of thought.
What?
And freedom of action.
Do something.
But you know, gals, just because a bunch of men signed that Declaration of Independence in 1776 doesn't mean that freedom was for men alone.
No.
Oh, no, you take Tom Jefferson.
Okay.
Ben Franklin.
Well.
John Hancock.
Adorable.
There's a hell of a guy for you right there.
Very cute.
All these men had wives.
They did.
They probably had a few broads on the side, too.
The Upper East Side.
These women wanted freedom just as much as their men did.
Yeah.
But, gals, I wonder, do we? I think it's time that we women thought about it a bit. Hell, I think it's time we did something about it.
Hell.
So come on, fellow females of the 20th century.
21st.
Be glad that you're an American.
I'm glad.
Proclaim your freedom.
Freedom.
And attention.
Oh, dear God.
Pledge allegiance.
Allegiance.
And...
God, we earned the beer. 8 segments. 8 segments to beer, baby. Oh my God! Holy crap! Do you realize what happened this week? Okay, just this week alone. They blocked Sally Yates from testifying. They canceled the testimony of James Clapper, the CIA director, and Brennan. They defended Nunes, who said that he had gone to the White House to alert the White House about incidental collection of gossip from foreign assets known to our intelligence community talking about Donald Trump, just talking about him. And yeah, his name was redacted, but Nunes could figure it out and thought, oh my God, my hair is on fire. I must tell the White House that I just got this from the White House. And then Sean Spicer said, well, if he got it from the White House, why did he go to the White House? That just doesn't pass the smell test. Well, of course it doesn't. But he did get it from the White House because yesterday that story was broken, I guess, in the New York Times. And now today it's in the Washington Post. Not 2 people, but 3 people inside the White House compiled the incidental collection and gave it to him. And all it was a bunch of gossip from known operators inside our country, known to the intelligence community, who are perfectly within our purview to surveil, and we do, and they know it. And now Flynn wants immunity, but it all comes down to Evelyn Farkas.
I'm going to throw a name at you. This is circulating right now. It's Evelyn Farkas.
Evelyn Farkas.
Evelyn Farkas.
Evelyn Farkas.
Evelyn Farkas.
The Obama's Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense that is out there, Evelyn Farkas.
Did Obama officials commit a crime here?
Did Evelyn Farkas just leak information confirming President Barack Obama spied on Donald Trump? Okay. I thought there was going to be... It all comes down to Evelyn freaking Farkas. Who the freak is Evelyn freaking Farkas? We have a freaking Farkas fracas. This is crazy. Who is that mysterious woman? Sure, yesterday we had the Senate Intelligence Committee have 2 sessions, 2 different sessions, one at 10 o'clock in the morning, one at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with 15 experts in hacking and in trolling and in honeypot accounts and in, Russia generally. We had a former FBI administrator say, follow the dead Russian bodies. You can't throw a spitball at the White House and not hit somebody with a connection to a Russian oligarch or a Russian bank or Vladimir Putin himself. I mean, you just can't do it. Sally can't have it. Can't do it. And yet it all comes down to Evelyn freaking Farkas. We have a Farkas fracas going on in the media now. So who is Evelyn freaking Farkas? Well, she's trending on Twitter. She must be somebody. Oh my God. All right. Here's who Evelyn freaking Farkas is, and you can, F the fracas, because there ain't none. There's no there. All this information piling up, that is showing complete and utter coordination, meaning there would be fake news stories put out by the freaking Russians. It would be botnetted out, meaning 1,000 Twitter accounts would be tweeting each 1,000 tweets a second. Okay, you do the math, okay? Hundreds of thousands of tweets going out in real time about fake stories, fake, Pizzagate, fake. There was a riot at our base at Incirlink, Turkey, fake. And then you'd have Manafort going on the TV repeating it. Right there, you've got cooperation with fake news. And the fake news does originate with Russian English speakers working in St. Petersburg, Russia. And in the Balkans. Oh, God, there's so much to cover. However, Evelyn freaking Farkas is the man that you want. She's your man. Subpoena the Farkas. It's like Seinfeld. She's Newman. Farkas. Unbelievable. Okay, who is she? Evelyn Farkas was the Obama administration's Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for, it's like a subreddit, Russia and Ukraine. Yes, we have secretaries of defense, and then we have deputy secretaries of defense, then we have assistant deputy secretaries of defense that major in Russia, major in Ukraine, you know what I mean? Each part of the country, we've got ones that major in Iraq, ones that major in Syria, they're failing. So that's who Evelyn Farkas is. Evelyn Farkas did an appearance about a month ago on MSNBC, like March 1st, the New York Times article. You remember the New York Times article that said that Obama had told everybody in his administration to retain documents, not to make sure that, documents and intelligence regarding Russia's hacking of our election, Russia's meddling in our elections, Russia's fake news dissemination, operation, everything, to save all and preserve all documents and intelligence for the next administration. He also went a step further and said, I want intelligence organizations, there's 17 of them, to be able to share this particular intelligence because they had a feeling, and this is what Evelyn Farkas said on MSNBC the day after this New York Times story came out. She was interviewed on MSNBC and she said, I was urging my former colleagues and frankly speaking, the people on the Hill, get as much information as you can. She said her big fear was that if Trump staffers found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff dealing with Russians, they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence. At the end of the interview, Farkas said, we have good intelligence on Russia. That's why you have the leaking. People are worried. Now, remember, she was the Obama administration's Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia and Ukraine. They think they're spinning this story now. They're saying freaking Farkas, she admitted that Obama wiretapped Donald Trump. What? Anything that I just said show you that Obama wiretapped or surveilled Donald Trump? No. Anything that I just said show Evelyn freaking Farkas, saying, yeah, that's what I saw? No. She was saying she wanted people on the Hill to preserve, to get documents and preserve them. People in the Gang of Eight, people in the intelligence committees, the House Intelligence Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee. That's what she was saying. And she said it the day after a New York Times article came out saying that that's exactly what Obama did. Nobody paid any attention to that interview. Not one person, not even me. Never saw it. Never heard a name like Farkas before because, believe me, it's just so much fun to say Evelyn freaking Farkas. Just whenever you feel down, say it. Make it your mantra. Anyway, she said, I was urging my former colleagues. This is key. Just remember I said that. She said, I was urging my former colleagues and frankly speaking, the people on the Hill. It was more actually aimed at telling the Hill, get as much information as you can get, as much as intelligence as you can get before President Obama leaves the administration. Because I had a fear that somehow the information would disappear with the senior people who left, so it would be hidden away in the bureaucracy that the Trump folks, if they found out we knew what we knew about the Trump staff dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence. So I became very worried because not enough was coming out into the open, and I knew there was more. We have very good intelligence on Russia. So then I had talked to some of my former colleagues, and I knew that they were also trying to help get the information to the Hill. That was one day after the New York Times printed Obama administration rushed to preserve intelligence of Russian election hacking. March 1st, March 2nd, she was interviewed. March 2nd of 2017. Okay, you know why she's saying former colleagues? You know when the last day she worked in the Obama administration was? 2015! But there's a Farkas fracas, everybody. There's a Farkas fracas. Everybody wants you to pay attention to Evelyn freaking Farkas. I'm just going to throw a name out. I'm just going to, and I'm just going to tell you, here's a name.
Farkas.
Evelyn Farkas.
Evelyn Farkas.
Evelyn Farkas.
Evelyn Farkas.
The Obama's Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense that is out there, Evelyn Farkas.
Did Obama officials commit a crime here?
No. Preserving intelligence pertaining to Trump's collusion or cooperation with Russian interests is not a crime when you're the president of the United States or you're sitting in the Gang of Eight or you're part of the intelligence communities and you're cleared for the. Oh my God! So now they're like, get Farkas to testify. She's like, I don't know anything. I haven't been there since 2015. They called me. I said, MSNBC called. I said, all right, I'll come and I'll tell you, what my concern was. So she said, when all this was going down, ahead of the election in 2016, I had been gone for more than a year at that point, but I wanted my former colleagues to share with the House Intelligence Committee and to share with the Senate Intelligence Committee this Russian interference and the Trump aides and the Trump campaign's interaction with them, because there was a lot more there, and I wasn't hearing anything about it. So they said, do you want to come and testify or whatever? She's like, I can't testify because I don't know anything. I haven't been there in 2 years. Oh my God. Freaking Farkas!
To speak to Randy, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Now that Trump's moved into the White House, I know. You could see he wasted no time. He went to work for his ultra-wealthy pals. He's making fundamental economic changes that are going to affect your money and your retirement. He's chipping away at banking regulations. You know he's going after Dodd-Frank, and that unwinds the fiduciary rule. That's a rule that keeps your money safe from deceptive financial practices. Like I said before, this administration is so awful. They are so greedy. And that's why now, more than ever, is the best time to diversify your retirement portfolio like I did. Gold's low correlation with stocks and bonds can help you in times of uncertainty. Call my friends at ITM Trading. Get a free gold kit. Learn why gold survives every government, every currency, every economic crisis. Call ITM today at 1-888-OWN-GOLD for guidance from their precious metals experts. They've helped thousands of people just like me buy gold and silver coins and bars, and they can help you too. 1-888-OWN-GOLD. Call 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1870. That was the day the 15th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was adopted. It was the third of the Reconstruction Amendments. It prohibited voting restrictions on the basis of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Premier historian Eric Foner states that the Reconstruction Amendments reflected, quote, a newly empowered national state and the idea of a national citizenry enjoying equality before the law. These legal changes also arose from the militant demands for equal rights from former slaves themselves. The bulk of southern states refused to ratify, but then capitulated. Interestingly, New York sought and failed to revoke its earlier ratification. The amendment split the women's suffrage movement for its failure to codify women's voting rights. Some radical Republicans also abstained on the basis that it did not also prohibit poll taxes and literacy tests. Immediately, the 15th Amendment came under attack. The Ku Klux Klan terrorized black voters and Reconstruction governments for years. One of the most extreme examples was the 1873 Colfax Massacre. After the Compromise of 1877, President Rutherford B. Hayes refused to enforce civil rights protections. The rise of discriminatory Jim Crow laws effectively disenfranchised Southern blacks for nearly a century. Congress would finally enforce the 15th Amendment fully through the Landmark Voting Rights Act of 1965. However, the act has come under attack most recently, as in the 2013 case Shelby versus Holder. Jurisdictions with histories of voter restrictions no longer have to obtain pre-clearance before implementing changes to voting laws and practices. Over 150 years after the end of the Civil War, African Americans are still fighting to protect their right to vote. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Have very good intelligence on Russia. So then I had talked to some of my former colleagues, and I knew that they were trying to also help get information to the Hill.
A lot going on today.
Yeah.
Mark,
that's why you have the leaking.
Exactly.
People are worried. All right. And I knew that they were trying to also help get information to the Hill.
All right, let's go backwards. Surveillance, unmasking, intelligence leaking, all acknowledged in that tape by Evelyn Farkas.
And I knew that they were trying to also help get information to the Hill. That's why you have the leaking.
David, is she admitting that the Obama administration surveilled, unmasked, and leaked?
That's just a devastating admission right there.
It's Evelyn freaking Farkas Friday, everybody. The interview did not describe anything having to do with surveillance because she hasn't been there since 2015.
I was urging my former colleagues and frankly speaking, the people on the Hill, it was more actually aimed at telling the Hill people, get as much information as you can, get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration, because I had a fear that somehow that information would disappear with the senior people who left. So it would be hidden away in the bureaucracy, that the Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff's dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence.
Evelyn freaking Farkas on a Friday. It's a freaking Farkas Friday fracas, everybody. Yeah, she's your guy. She's your man. All right, Rick in Los Angeles. May I help you? Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
Use the phone much?
Our power just got shut off.
Oh, wow.
Reason.
Did you pay the bill?
Yeah.
This is what happens when Comcast goes out. Captain Leary says, did you pay the bill?
I don't pay bills here. I just work here, Randy.
Well, I work here, but I pay the bills too. So buy a stinking podcast, everybody. There, we worked it in.
Absolutely. Well, this Farkas thing is just another one of those shiny objects that we're supposed to chase around like
Abso-freaking-lutely, Farkas, Fracas, Friday. Yeah, it is ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous.
But I was calling about Michael Flynn. I know you may have you haven't really gotten to him yet that much on the show. But
nope.
My understanding, at least from watching the mainstream media, is that his attorney is trying like hell to get him immunity, but he doesn't seem like he has any takers.
No, not yet. No takers. Now, here's how immunity works. You could back me up. I know you're an attorney. This is how immunity works. You have to create something called a proffer. What is a proffer? You have to offer. It's offer with a pra in front of it.
Right.
Just think of it as an offer. You have to tell them what you're going to tell them if you get immunity. And there are no takers because the Senate Intelligence Committee really wouldn't be the place to do this. They really wouldn't be the ones to give the immunity. They could give a limited immunity, but really it should come from the Department of Justice, because the Department of Justice is who, Flynn has been dealing with, and they are the ones who would prosecute Flynn. So if the Senate Intelligence Committee gave him some sort of immunity in exchange for what he's telling them, and it's very like he's a big fish, but he's got bigger fish that he could finger. Right. Then they would say, it might be worth it to take it because a prosecution of Flynn would take years, as we all know. So, but it's up to the Department of Justice. The Senate Intelligence Committee is not interested in giving him immunity. So that's why there's no takers.
Right. Well, another thing is, too, in order to get immunity, you have to convince the prosecution that you have credibility. And this guy is like such a world, champion class liar, heavyweight champion class liar that, it's difficult to see how a prosecutor would take the chance of giving this guy immunity. You're basically giving the guy a get out of jail free card, usually.
Well, look, here's who gets immunity. People ask for immunity in, I'll give them this. This is a very tense time. Congress has made it very clear, as has located, and a very thorough investigation going on with regard to everything from Russian hacking, Russian interference in our elections, Russian propaganda, to Russian mobsters, their connection to any of the Trump aides, to Trump himself. This is a very and if I were Flynn and I had a story to tell, which is what his lawyer says he has. Let's hope it has a happy ending, everybody. If I had a story to tell, I might ask for immunity. I remember Lois Lerner asked for immunity. Now, the Senate did not remember the IRS lady that was accused of going after conservative groups for their fundraising and their tax reporting, but not Democratic groups. It was a lie, but she asked for immunity. The Senate refused to give her immunity, and she was called to testify, so she asserted her Fifth Amendment privilege, which is what Flynn will do.
Sure. He has no incentive to he has no incentive to tell his story unless he has assurances that he's not going to get prosecuted.
But here's what I suspect his story will be without immunity, because, as you say so correctly, he is a world heavyweight champion liar.
Right.
All right. You don't give him immunity. He either, he takes the fifth, or he goes and testifies, but he testifies this was all Hillary Clinton and how, he's got this grudge against Obama and Clinton because they had him removed from the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Yeah,
they had him fired.
Right. The guy has been unbalanced for the last several years, at least, I think.
And it turns out that the guy who procured these documents for Devin Nunes is tied to Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn brought him into the White House, and it turns out that when Flynn left and General McMaster replaced Flynn, McMaster wanted Flynn's guy fired, and the CIA had been pressuring the White House all along not to put this guy Cohen in here because they didn't trust him. They thought he was a world heavyweight champion liar too, and unstable. What they said about Flynn, they said about this guy too. So. It's interesting that none of the people around Flynn were worthy of serving, according to the CIA, and McMaster did go to Trump and say, I want this guy out of here. And they removed him. They took him out and they gave him a different assignment. They got a detailee from the CIA to take this guy's place. And then all of a sudden, this guy Cohen goes to Bannon, and he goes to... who's the other one there? Was it Reince?
Reince?
I don't know if he went to I think he went to Reince and Bannon, and he said, I want my job back. I want my job back. And so all of a sudden one day the detailee from CIA who was taking his desk was ordered to get his things together, get out of the office, and they put him back in there.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I know. The story is nuts.
It's totally nuts. Now, a second reason why they might not want Flynn to testify is if they've got him on these intercepts and they can place him in meetings with, Russian persons and so forth, he can't really offer them anything, so why give him immunity? So that's another possible reason why they wouldn't give immunity. And, I know sometimes in Senate hearings and, House hearings, witnesses are given immunity. I think Oliver North was.
Yes.
During the whole Iran-Contra-gate, and that thing ended up blowing up in the government's face because they granted the immunity and then prosecuted him, but they used in the prosecution some of the immunized information.
Yes.
And so he got his conviction reversed, as I recall.
Yes, he did.
So
but
it's a very tricky thing.
Listen, I interviewed Oliver North about all that, probably in 2003. In 2003, I interviewed. I'll never forget it. And he wouldn't sit down. He saw when he came into my studio, he just assumed everybody in talk radio was conservative. Just didn't do his homework, And he was at some, Christian jamboree here in Florida, and he came from. I swear, and he came in, and he was all. Juiced up from the love, and he came in, and then he saw that I had 12 volumes of Lawrence Walsh, who was the prosecutor in Iran, just assembled on my desk, and I save everything. So he saw all that, and he was like, "Oh, damn!" He wouldn't sit down. So then he spent like his first 5 minutes telling me how you could kill a man with one of my paper clips. Swear to God, he said you just take it apart.
Is he frickin' MacGyver or something, Randy?
Crazy. He started telling me I could take one of your paper clips and I could just open it up and I could mash it in your eye. I could just twist it and mash it and you'll die. So, and then I just got to the chase and I said, so let me ask you a question, Colonel. Was there ever a day in your life, when you stood accused and convicted of crimes against your country? And oh my God, interview over. He took his headphones.
Started.
Oh my God, he took his headphones off. He threw them on the desk. He walked. His face was bright, and I was like, "That's what I do this for." That's just all those years. That was the moment,
Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
I mean, you were probably smiling inside.
God, I was so excited. It was such a high for me.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well, good job, Randy. And this gets interesting and interesting.
Yeah.
More interesting
Well, you know what? You bring this
day.
history up. The only other time we had think about this. Flynn is the national security advisor to the president for 3 whole weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but The only other national security advisor ever to be convicted of a felony like this was in Iran-Contra. It was Admiral Poindexter.
Oh, yes.
So now we have General Flynn. It's so interesting, these military guys. I don't know what happens in the officers, realm. I'm only an enlisted. But the officers seem to have a lot of freedom to do really, really crummy things and think they're going to get away with it.
No kidding. Wasn't Poindexter connected to the CIA, or am I getting him confused with Bob Casey or one of those guys?
I don't know. I mean, it's so weird. You know what? I just printed out an article, an old one from the New York Times. It's on the printer, actually. I didn't fetch it. I didn't know it would come up. I kind of suspected it would, but yeah, I'll get it. I'll give you the background.
Okay, well, great, Randy. Great show.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
You keep it up, Rick. You're the man. You're the man. Keep it up. Thank you.
And Beer O'Clock coming up soon.
13 best seconds of my life.
There you go. Take it easy.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much. Yeah, I did print this out. Poindexter is found guilty of all 5 criminal charges for Iran-Contra cover-up. This is April 7th, 1990. Yeah, 1990. Poindexter, the enigmatic rear admiral, oh yeah, baby, I know, is charged with deceiving and lying to Congress as part of the effort to conceal the Reagan administration's actions in the Iran-Contra affair, was convicted today of all 5 criminal charges against him. Mr. Poindexter, a former national security advisor, that's Michael Flynn's position, or was, who met daily with President Ronald Reagan to discuss foreign and military policy, is the most senior official of the Reagan administration to be charged and found guilty of felony charges stemming directly from his official actions in the affair. He's also the highest-ranking White House official to be convicted of criminal violations since President Richard M. Nixon's top aides, John Ehrlichman and H.R. Haldeman, were found guilty on January 1st, 1975, of conspiracy and obstruction of justice in the Watergate affair. Mr. Poindexter, God, this is so amazing. This is 1990. He was only 53 years old. I thought he was such an old freaking man. And he was only 53 years old. I guess you have the face you deserve. You know, at 53. He rose to his feet and stood nearly at military attention as the verdict was read. He rocked slowly and his face froze in a rigid, expressionless gaze as the jury foreman quietly uttered the word, guilty. Guilty, 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 guilty. 1 time for each count in the indictment. After the court proceeding, Mr. Poindexter kissed his wife, Linda, an Episcopal priest, and they left the courthouse in silence. Outside, his reporters shouted questions to the couple, asking whether Mr. Poindexter had doubts about not testifying in his own defense. His wife turned to one reporter and said, "No second thoughts." The verdict underscored the collapse of Mr. Poindexter's once bright naval career, which began when he graduated at the top of his class at the Naval Academy in 1958. Oh, that's why he seemed old. He was steadily promoted until he was selected for White House service in a national security role that almost assured him consideration for the Chief of Naval Operations, the highest post in the Navy. Instead, he resigned as the National Security Advisor in November 1986 when the affair was disclosed, and retired from the Navy in 1987. So I guess he came straight from the Navy. I don't think he was a CIA guy at all. Anyway, he was convicted to 25 years in prison and fines totaling $1.25 million. One can only hope that we can redact one name and insert another. Summer in Dallas, hello.
Hello. Happy freaking Farkas Friday.
Oh, good for you.
I had to write it down, so I had it right in front of me. So I wouldn't tongue twist. Anyways, I was curious on your take on the fact that Rachel pointed this out on Twitter, I think this morning, and the Covington letter mentions the committees, but nowhere on it does it mention the FBI or Comey. So I'm curious because I've been listening to you. Mm-hmm. Comey is your boyfriend.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Flynn was able to retroactively file as a foreign agent.
Mm-hmm.
So since the FBI isn't listed on this letter, I was wondering if that meant that he had made a deal with them, but clearly that deal did not include immunity. So now he's trying to get a better deal, and he's not going to get it.
Well,
that's
public,
the way I was reading it.
Well, public testimony is a whole different thing, and whether or not Comey will give him immunity, depends on what Flynn has not yet told him, but he could tell. Or it depends on what the size of the fish that Flynn could fry, is. And if Comey feels that he's got enough on Flynn to make a successful prosecution of him, and maybe he's decided, to charge him with, interfering in an investigation or something less than a felony, which, lobbying a foreign government without registering as a foreign agent is a felony, and obviously he was allowed to retroactively register. So maybe he's looking at charging him with something smaller, and that's all he's got. Now, if Flynn is saying, I'm withholding information from Comey that I could actually fry a bigger fish with, I think Comey would be very interested in that information. However, that does not seem likely that Flynn has something more than what Comey already has. Otherwise, they would have gone to Comey and asked for immunity.
Right, and I agree, and that's what I'm saying is I think that he didn't get the deal that he was wanting. I think he is going to get charged with something. I just found it very interesting that the letter, because the Wall Street Journal, when they wrote their article, said that he was asking for immunity from everyone, and they even specifically mentioned the committees and the FBI. But if you look at the actual letter from the Covington law firm, nowhere in that letter does it specify the FBI. It specifically calls out the House and Senate committees, but that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the intelligence committee, lawyers, responded to this attorney by saying that that's not on the table.
Right.
They said, we're not entertaining immunity for anybody. So I'm sure that the intelligence community has spoken to the FBI. And either they don't need him, they don't need his testimony, they have enough, that Comey has enough. Or they don't think that, they should get in the way of the DOJ's investigation. I don't know which it is. And that's why we bring up Admiral Poindexter, because in Oliver North, because they did immunize his testimony, Oliver North's testimony. And then Oliver North turned out was guilty of laundering money through Saudi Arabia after he sold tow missiles to the Iranians. They got paid and they needed to launder the money.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. Trump's order rolling back the Clean Power Plan won't save coal jobs and is a false choice between jobs and a clean environment. That's the position of the Blue-Green Alliance, a coalition of environmental groups and labor unions. Kim Glass is executive director of the Blue-Green Alliance.
He offered Americans a false choice between good jobs and safe workplaces or a clean environment. And I think whenever you pit jobs against the environment, it's one of the oldest plays in the playbook, and it's been refuted again and again.
Glass says Trump's order trying to overturn the Clean Power Plan is an assault against both the environment and against workers.
This is not just an assault on the environment, it's an assault on workers as well. There's been certain rollbacks on workers' rights and their health and safety on the job. And so our Blue-Green Alliance, we not only work on environmental policy, but we also work on worker-related issues.
In fact, Glass says the green economy offers enormous job opportunities while also protecting the environment. The Blue-Green Alliance is concerned that the U.S. may not honor its climate change commitments under the Paris Agreement now and could cede environmental leadership to other nations. Glass says the Blue-Green Alliance is also concerned that the U.S. under Trump could miss the boat on the enormous job opportunities that a green economy offers. 23,000 coal miner retirees and their dependents are losing their retiree health care and pensions unless Congress votes by the end of April to pass the Miners Protection Act. Kentucky Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, hasn't even scheduled a vote on the Miners Protection Act that would save the United Mine Workers of America pension and health plan. The UMWA sent a letter earlier this month to the retirees warning that unless Congress votes to save them by the end of April, thousands of coal miners will lose retiree health care and pensions. Peabody Coal used bankruptcy laws to betray its promise to pay for coal miner retiree pensions and health care. That's what created the crisis faced by the 23,000 miners and their dependents. The Cornell Grad Student Workers Union representation election was close this week with 81 ballots unresolved. The election outcome isn't yet determined until the outstanding ballots are resolved. The initial count was 991 against union representation and 856 for. But since the 81 unresolved ballots could be decisive, no final result has yet been announced. It's not clear how long it will take to investigate and review the voting to be sure the final vote tally is accurate. WIN is brought to you in part by the Amalgamated Transit Union, the largest labor union representing transit and allied workers in the U.S. and Canada. Online at atu.org. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Hi, we're back, and everything is possible again. Isn't it beautiful? Well, if you want to keep it this way, buy a stinking podcast. Oh yes, you have to buy a stinking podcast. And you get that at randyrhodes.com, where we're open all day, all night long. randyrhodes.com. Get your stinking podcast.
Welcome back to The Cat Show. Up next, we have Nico. Nico is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right. A group known especially for their sunspot sleeping, ball chasing, leg rubbing, and of course, companionship. Just look how she struts.
It's like she owns the place.
And see how she curls up and cuddles her person.
The pitch on her purring is simply perfect.
Nice one.
Fantastic cat. But really the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Nico is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
The Randy Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
This is the Randy Rhodes Show. To speak with Randy, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
And the Oscar goes to Devin Nunes for Incidental Collection.
We'll be going to the White House this afternoon to share what I know with the president and his team. The administration, I don't think, is aware of this, so I want to make sure that I go over there and tell them what I know. They need to see it. If they don't have it, they need to see it. Today I briefed the president on the concerns that I had, and the president needs to know that these intelligence reports are out there, and I have a duty to tell him that. This is information that was brought to me that I thought the president needed to know, and I thought it was important for the president to know this. That's why I briefed the speaker this morning, and I came down here as soon as I could. I think he'd like to see these reports, and I'd hopefully when we get them, hopefully they'll get them to the White House also. I would be concerned if I was the president, and that's why I wanted him to know, and I felt like I had a duty and obligation to tell him because, as you know, he's been taking a lot of heat in the news media.
I don't know that makes sense. I did not sit on that briefing. It just doesn't. So I don't know why he would brief the speaker and then come down here to brief us on something that we would have briefed him on. It doesn't really seem to make a ton of sense. It doesn't really pass the smell test.
You know why Nunes is so good at lying? Because he always has that painfully uncomfortable look when he's talking on camera. You know what I mean? He looks like he's lying when he says good morning. So he looks like a dumb, willing dupe. And that is Nancy Pelosi's conclusion, too, is that they used Nunes because Nunes was just one of these guys that always looks like he's lying. He's just got this painfully confused look on his face. He looks like he's like the only person in Washington who looks, more awkward in front of the microphone than Sean Spicer does. It's like that face when you're hoping someone is buying your crap. That's what he's got on his face all the time, that face. It's just I love that he said he briefed the speaker. What does that mean? Did he tell Paul Ryan, oh, I got to run up to the White House to tell him something they just told me? Now we know the White House told Nunes stuff, and then Nunes pretended to go to the White House to tell them the stuff that they told him. This is unbelievable. And Sean Spicer, it doesn't really pass the smell test. You know why? Because he's immune to smells now. He works in a pile of dung. He is completely and utterly, it's like super bacteria. You know, it's like when you take too many antibiotics and then you get a super bug. That is what it's like. He works in a big pile heap of dung full of bacteria, and Sean Spicer is immune. He is totally and utterly immune to the superbugs that are all over him. I'm telling you, Sean, quit your job, save yourself. This whole week, it was a debacle. It was an elaborate, half-assed plan to provide Trump with some really crappy cover for an early morning tweet storm that he experienced and participated in with his tiny little thumbs on his tiny little phone in Mar-a-Lago on a Saturday morning at 6 a.m. That's what no wonder Putin's got Trump on a leash. I mean, these people, you know, this is how you know that this is a Trump cover-up, okay? This is how you know. It's a clown car of a cover-up, and it's got all the Trump branding all over it of absolute and utter chaos. Now, here's how you could tell that the Russians are the ones that did the hacking, the spying, and the botnets and, the organized feeds of the news, the fake news, and the creation of the stories, and that they were, sort of well-written. That's how you know the Russians did it and the Trumps didn't. One is organized and it's down to the district. It's super concentrated. It's got data points. It's got thousands of data points. It's got pinpoint accuracy. That's how you can tell that it was a Russian thing. Then you look at the cover up and it's all Trump because it's just complete clown car chaos. On a Friday of Farkas fracas. I don't know. I mean, I why didn't they just have Nunes say whatever they wanted him to say and then not have him go back to the White House to view the material? I mean, he was going to totally lie anyway, so why leave a trail of breadcrumbs? It's almost like Trump doesn't want to be president, and he's saying, please, just stop the man. Catch me already. Just catch me. Now Michael Flynn needs immunity, The only people that ask for immunity are people who need immunity and know things about other people. So his lawyer said, quote, General Flynn certainly has a story to tell, and all I can hope is that it has a very happy ending, a la Iran-Contra and the Poindexter debacle, Because, Flynn is the one who said, only guilty people ask for immunity. Now, I just want you to know that is not true. That is not true. If you ask for immunity, it's because you're about to, you're about to pull a Henry Hill. You're about to point fingers at Paulie. Okay, you're about to point fingers at at other people. You're about to be a rat. So. He wants protection is what he wants. I mean, who would want to be, in Leavenworth right next to Paul Manafort if you're the one that popped Paul Manafort? You know what I mean? That wouldn't be pretty. All right, Christian in Lexington, Kentucky.
A great show as always, Randy.
Well,
a couple of quick points. I mean, really impressive show. Fracas Friday is going to be my new meme going forward. Couple of interesting stories. The South China Morning Post reported that Putin is echoing Trump, saying that climate change is a hoax, and that's interesting. Michael Flynn's lawyer, it's being bandied about on Twitter today, back in November last year, tweeted for no reason, just crazy, that President Trump is going to make a novel use of pardoning. Just you wait and see.
No.
And it's crazy. Robert Keller, if you look him up. And my last point is, LBJ going through Vietnam had a letter that went out to the Smothers Brothers, applauding that, at least in America during crazy political times, we have to applaud the power of satire to make a difference, just to make people laugh, and how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
And this thin-skinned president, I hope I'm personally putting all of the Hamilton soundtrack to Trump the Mafia Leech, David K. Johnson's book that you turned me on to, which is amazing.
Yeah.
We need more David K. Johnson.
Yes, we do.
Thank you for having him on.
I need to reach back out.
To make a difference.
I need to reach back out next week now that all of this is on the table and all these moving parts are actually starting to fit together in the puzzle. We need to talk again to Malcolm Nance, and we need to talk again to David K. Johnston.
And please beg him, because, beg him, because he said he only had 5 weeks to make the book. We need 2.0 of the making of Trump, and it can't be called the making of Trump. It's the Mafia Leech Trump, because he and his dad have been with a mafia leeching off of them forever.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting is that, I'm following the FBI in New York, especially in the Inspector General's office, because they're the ones that are charged with investigating Rudy Giuliani, the NYPD, and the New York Bureau of the FBI, and whether or not they made it plain to Comey that if Comey didn't come forward and say that Hillary's emails were found on Anthony Weiner's computer, that they would leak it, and Comey would then, be a liar because he told Congress that if there was any more emails, he'd update them, even though the case was closed. So the Inspector General is actually looking into whether or not there was, collusion between the active officers in the New York Bureau and Rudy Giuliani and the NYPD and a guy named Eric Prince, who's famous for owning Blackwater, and his sister, Betsy DeVos, is now our Secretary of Education. So that's another case. So anyway, I was on their website, and I see 10 mob guys, Russian mob guys, were just busted in New York. They've just, indicted them. God only knows, how deep this goes. You know what I mean? Like, who are they involved too? Because if you read David K. Johnston, then you know that the mafia and Trump the Russian mafia and Trump go way, way back.
Well, the trouble is that big industry has always relied on, sometimes the Pinkertons, if you want to do it, sort of, law and order thugs. But big industry has also relied on, not law and order, muscle like the mafia, to get things done. So you have
just watch Godfather 1 and look at the meeting in Cuba, and you'll see. Yep. Okay, here's a country under sanctions, right? It's actually pre-sanctions. I shouldn't say it. This is worse because Flynn is dealing with a country that's under U.S. sanctions. Unbelievable. And so so look at that scene, that one scene where they're in Cuba. Look at who's at the table. It was United Fruit Company. It was AT&T. It was the sugar people. You know what I mean? And they're passing a solid gold telephone around the table, and pledging, that they've never had it so good. They don't have to, fall under the purview of the Senate Intelligence Committee or the Kefauver Committee that's, charged with breaking up mob families. They said, we got a friendly nation just 90 miles away. Of course, big business. I say this all the time, and I mean it with my whole heart. Behind every great fortune is a great crime. It's not that Donald Trump is any smarter than any of his supporters. It's not that Donald Trump is any more, intelligent, savvy, or what. It's just that he's been gifted with a charismatic salesman's personality, just like any tent revival preacher. But he is willing to bend, if not break the law. Obviously, his father taught him how to do this. Roy Cohn, who was, the attorney for McCarthy.
The mob families.
Yes, and the mob families.
Yeah. Well, you need to have James Bradley, who wrote Flag of Our Fathers on, but he also wrote The China Mirage, where he talks how the United States, presidents in power and Secretary of States, their fortunes came from Chinese opium. And this is not some whacked out author.
It's exactly war is a racket.
It goes back.
You read Smedley Butler. Read that.
Forever.
War is a racket. It goes back forever, and behind every great fortune is a great crime. There's just no getting around it. And Trump is just a great con man. He talked a great populist game. He perked up every working person's ears. He is not doing anything he said he would do. Nothing.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit randyrhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Buy a stinking podcast.
This is the top of the hour from the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. Instead of commercials, you've got progressive news and interviews right here at the top of the hour.
Hello, Progressive Voices TuneIn listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
No one could miss the debacle being played out yesterday and right now in the halls of Congress.
Which debacle are you talking about?
Yeah, it's hard to
many
pick
of them.
one nowadays. Well, for now, we're going to talk about the repeal and replace of Obamacare. The Republicans have authored a bill that no one seemed to want, including the Republicans themselves. Patty, only 17% of Americans polled were in favor of that bill and the repeal.
Well, Shane, the shame of all of that is, even as flawed as the ACA is, our great state of California's healthcare exchange, Covered California, has done a remarkable job with the ACA and continues to do so even through all of this.
We have Donna Smith on the line with us now for a quick check-in. Hi, Donna. How's it going?
Hi, Donna.
So, Donna, what can people do to stay on top of this and express their concerns still to elected officials about this? Because, like you said, it's going to come back.
Nobody can let their guard down now and think that this means the Republicans aren't going to go back at it at some point. And yes, healthcare is complicated. Yes, healthcare is tied to 1/6 of this nation's economy. All of our economic activity is tied into healthcare.
So what can people do to stay on top of it?
Good questions, and I think we're hearing so many of our folks now come forward and say, now is the time for all of us to really say, Medicare for all is the only way to solve this problem, and now we have to pull along our Democratic friends. So work with, talk those same congressional folks that you went to their town halls and told them how devastating it was going to be, just like I did. It was going to be terribly devastating to me to lose my coverage, but now is not the time. In fact, I'm going to go this afternoon to a meetup of other people here in Denver and one of the main issues we're going to talk about is how do we keep pressure on Diana DeGette, who is our representative, to say, okay, great work, Congresswoman. Thank you for helping with this. Now, we need you to get on H.R. 676. We need you to be a co-sponsor of that legislation and show your support for going in the right direction for health care. Now, we cannot rest. We cannot wait for the next attack by the Republicans. So find out where your congressional member stands. You can always go to pdamerica.org, which is our website. You can also go the nurses in it, nationalnursesunited.org. Keeps a lot of wonderful stuff on their website. There's going to be national actions coming up on the 8th of April around health care and defending health care and demanding Medicare for all. So keep checking in frequently, and I know Nurse Talk will put things up on their site as well.
We certainly will. And here in California, SB 562 is on the table. We have a Democratic governor, and the House and Senate are Democratic leaning.
I think now is the time for California. Michael Moore was on shows yesterday, programs MSNBC and Bill Maher on HBO, talking about the fact that now California and New York got to lead the way.
Yes, they do.
And show the nation how we're going to make this happen. And California's bill will be just fabulous for the country and for Californians in particular. No reason whatsoever why California should not embrace this. As you said, you've got a wonderful makeup in your legislature and in your governorship. Time to ask those folks to just go forward before the crisis hits. Heaven forbid if we had California and millions of people in California
33 million
health care, that would not be good. So.
And Donna, moving forward, we keep hearing Paul Ryan and Donald Trump say that, it's all going to explode now. Let's just watch it. Is it going to explode? This is confusing to me, so.
Well, it's not going to explode. I think what we're going to see happen is a continuing trend where fewer insurance companies will offer plans in some of the least populated states, in some of the areas where they feel like there's no ability for them to really negotiate prices. I think, it's an ironic thing that insurance companies worry so much about their bottom line, and the expectation is the rest of us won't worry about ours with premiums. But I think the reality is that we will see more and more pressure on the insurance markets, and we will see the need to reform and make sure that we tweak and we change. Or the other option is don't just tweak it. Move it on, move it forward, and make it a true Medicare for all. I heard Jennifer Granholm talking recently about, moving Medicare incrementally in terms of let's lower the age to 60 and then let's lower it to 55. That might be a decent idea, but there's no reason not to just make the pool bigger. That's the basic problem. So when they talk about the ACA exploding, it's because there are too few people in the pool in some areas so that the costs become very prohibitive. So the reality is that's going to get worse. That stress is going to be tough for people. They're not going to be able to find some plans that are affordable that give them the coverage that they truly need. So we will have to go back at working it, but it's a long way from exploding.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
You've been listening to Top of the Hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. Commercial-free interviews and exclusive progressive news and information at the top of the hour.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
The Russia implications and allegations that you've heard. Why aren't you worried about any possible ties between the Trump team and Russia?
Because that's what they're supposed to do during campaign. I mean, dozens of diplomats who meet with senators and congressmen. A lot of people misunderstood, I think, when Trump compliments Putin. You might respect them just because of what they've been able to accomplish. And if you look at Putin, even though we don't agree with what he does, as far as his agenda, he's done a pretty good job of accomplishing it in Russia. But people on the left have misconstrued that as meaning that Trump wants to be like Putin.
But if you're saying it's business as usual, lots of people meet with Russian diplomats, then why didn't Michael Flynn and Attorney General Jeff Sessions disclose it?
He came forward after and said that he had met with 10 or 12 other diplomats through the course, I don't remember if it was that week or that month. It's what they do.
In the context of
it's just what they do.
The way I look at that is, to be honest, let me ask you a question, Allison. Do you remember what you had for lunch last Tuesday?
So you think he really just didn't remember that he met with the Russian ambassador?
You cannot remember every fine detail.
Yeah, lunch is different than meeting with a Russian ambassador.
It's not when you meet with a lot of ambassadors and that's part of your job.
And what about when you meet with people who are Russian spies who are now posing as the head of a bank under U.S. sanctions? It's just what they do. It's what they do. Oh, these Trump voters, they're impermeable, baby. They are like, super, super rubber. Everything that you show, everything that you say. 1,000 paid Russian trolls, dead Russians showing up everywhere. Sally Yates blocked from her for even testifying about why she was fired. And of course, she's the one that told Trump that Flynn has made you blackmailable. For God's sake. That's just what they do. It's just what they do. When Russia flies into the airspace, where do you think they go? I can see Russia from my house. It's just what they do. Oh, this is unbelievable. So why is Michael Flynn asking for immunity? It's just what they do. Why did he lie about it? He forgot. Do you remember what you had for lunch? Oh, I know that guy. That smarmy guy at the end. Do you remember what you had for lunch? That is a Trump supporter. Those are the people that have been won over by Russian propaganda. They would make such good Germans, these people. Oh my God, they missed their calling. They really were born a couple generations too late. They just don't care. It's amazing. It is amazing. Meanwhile, they're not watching any of these hearings. They're not watching the testimony. They're not watching, what this Clint guy yesterday. Holy mother of God. Here, let me play you a CBS report, okay? This will bring you kind of up to date. I thought of all the, Anderson tried. It just didn't. My explanations of what's going on is really pretty simple, but this one's pretty good.
Three parallel investigations
the
Russian attempt to sway the election. One by the FBI,
right.
The House investigation that Major just mentioned, and another by the Senate Intelligence Committee. The Senate hearing today opened a window on what the Russians have been hiding, and Jeff Pegues is following that.
This Russian propaganda on steroids was designed to poison the national conversation in America.
Top Democrat Mark Warner and the rest of the Senate Intelligence Committee heard details today about Russia's vast information warfare campaign, which involves at least 15,000 operatives worldwide.
Oh my God!
Writing and spreading false news stories and conspiracy theories online. Witnesses said the effort goes back years and often starts with Russian-backed media. The ongoing campaign has targeted President Trump himself. Former FBI Special Agent Clint Watts.
I can tell you right now today, accounts tweet at President Trump during high volumes when they know he's online, and they push conspiracy theories.
Many of the fake news stories begin with real events. Last August, during an active shooter scare at New York's JFK airport, Watts says Russian fake news writers added to the panic.
We watched social media trolls and gray outlets pump fake stories out, which ramped up that fear.
The Russians also tried to manipulate a protest at a U.S. military base in Turkey into a major terrorist attack and tried to sow unrest in the U.S. by inflaming protests such as Occupy Wall Street and the Black Lives Matter movement. Jesus. The Russians also used sophisticated hacking like that of the Democratic National Committee. Cybersecurity expert Kevin Mandia says they stole much more than what has been released on websites like WikiLeaks and Guccifer 2.0.
What we've seen publicly released is probably under 1% of what we'd attribute to the Russian government stealing.
Oh my God. The hacking continues. Republican Senator and former presidential candidate Marco Rubio.
Within the last 24 hours, at 10:45 a.m. yesterday, a second attempt was made, again, against former members of my presidential campaign team who had access to our internal information, again targeted from an IP address from an unknown location in Russia.
Watts also told Congress the Russians may now be trying to cover their tracks. There have been a series of arrests in Russia of cybersecurity officials and a number of mysterious deaths around the world.
Follow the trail of dead Russians. There's been more dead Russians in the past 3 months that are tied to this investigation, who have assets in banks all over the world.
Today.
Oh my God! All right, so let's listen to some of Clint Watts's testimony, because this was just amazing, and that the nerve of the fake media, and you should know who they are by now, but the nerve of them to bring up Evelyn freaking Farkas and make this a fracas on a Friday. She's your man. She's your man. Hasn't worked in the White House, hasn't worked in the Defense Department since 2015, but she's your guy. It's just amazing. But Clint Watts, his testimony yesterday was just unbelievable. First of all, what he said was this started during the primaries. You should have seen Marco Rubio's face. He told Marco Rubio, I personally think that you were targeted as well as others, but I should talk to you and tell you what they did to you, little Marco, what they did to you. And Marco, his eyes open out, and he's leaning into his staffer going, oh my God, look, they can prove it. I knew it. Farkas. Here, listen.
From these overt Russian propaganda outlets, a wide range of English-speaking conspiratorial websites, which we refer to as gray outlets, some of which mysteriously operate from Eastern Europe and are curiously led by pro-Russian editors of unknown financing, sensationalize these conspiracies and fake news published by white outlets. American-looking social media accounts, the hecklers, honeypots, and hackers I described earlier, working along automated bots, further amplify this Russian propaganda amongst unwitting Westerners. Through the end of 2015 and start of 2016, the Russian influence system began pushing themes and messages seeking to influence the outcome of the U.S. presidential election. Russia's overt media outlets and covert trolls sought to sideline opponents on both sides of the political spectrum with adversarial views towards the Kremlin. They were in full swing during both the Republican and Democratic primary season and may have helped sink the hopes of candidates more hostile to Russian interests long before the field narrowed. Senator Rubio, in my opinion, you anecdotally suffered from these efforts. The final piece of Russia's modern active measures surfaced in the summer of 2016 as hacked materials were strategically leaked. The disclosures of WikiLeaks, Guccifer 2.0, and DC Leaks demonstrated how hacks would power the influence system Russia had built so successfully in the previous 2 years. As an example, on the evening of 30 July 2016, my colleagues and I watched as RT and Sputnik News simultaneously launched false stories of the U.S. airbase in Incirlik, Turkey being overrun by terrorists. Within minutes, pro-Russian social media aggregators and automated bots amplified this false news story. More than 4,000 tweets in the first 78 minutes after launching this false story linked back to the active measures accounts we'd tracked in the previous 2 years. These previously identified accounts, almost simultaneously appearing from different geographic locations and communities, amplified the fake news story in unison. The hashtags pushed by these accounts were nuclear, media, Trump, Benghazi. The most common words found in English-speaking Twitter user profiles were God, military, Trump, family, country, conservative, Christian, America, and Constitution.
Write those down.
These accounts and their messages clearly sought to convince Americans a U.S. military base was being overrun in a terrorist attack. In reality, a small protest gathered outside the gate, and the increased security at the air base sought to secure the arrival of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
All right. So they've been following this since the primary. Since the primary. Russia had a candidate that they wanted to win. And that candidate was Donald Trump. And you might wonder why, but remember what Donald Trump was doing on the campaign trail. Remember how he was yelling at everybody. Everybody had a nickname. Everybody was bad. The whole world sucked. This one is a rapist. That one is a terrorist. Black lives don't matter. Blue lives do. All this stuff that the Russians were feeding to the Trump campaign was coming out of Trump's mouth. Manafort, this Incirlik, Turkey thing, Manafort went on TV and repeated verbatim that there was a terrorist attack at our air base in Turkey. Never happened. Turns out Flynn was lobbying for Turkey. Also, for anybody who's interested in foreign stuff, okay, Turkey is about to become a full-blown dictatorship. A full-blown autocracy, okay? Autocratic guy, been prime minister for years and years and years. All of a sudden, Erdogan's president, and now he doesn't want elections, okay? This is what they're after. Okay, let Clint Watts explain to you what the goal of all this was. And then you ask yourself this one simple question. What did they change in the GOP platform that would indicate that Trump was doing Putin's bidding? Okay, just keep that question in mind.
A closer look at those bots tied in closely with other social media campaigns we had observed pushing Russian propaganda months before. Hackers proliferated the networks and could be spotted amongst recent data breaches and website defacements. Closely circling those hackers were honeypot accounts, attractive-looking women, political partisans that were trying to social engineer other users. Above all, we observed hecklers, those synchronized trolling accounts you see on Twitter that would attack political targets using similar talking patterns and points. Those accounts, some of which overtly support the Kremlin, promoted Russian foreign policy positions targeting key English-speaking audiences throughout Europe and North America. Soviet active measures, strategy, and tactics have been reborn and updated for the modern Russian regime in the digital age. Today, Russia hopes to win the Second Cold War through the force of politics as opposed to the politics of force. While Russia certainly seeks to promote Western candidates sympathetic to their worldview and foreign policy objectives, winning a single election is not their end goal. Russian active measures hope to topple democracies through the pursuit of five complementary objectives. 1, undermine citizen confidence in democratic governance. 2, foment and exasperate divisive political fissures. 3, erode trust between citizens and elected officials and their institutions. 4, popularize Russian policy agendas within foreign populations. And 5, create general distrust or confusion over information sources by blurring the lines between fact and fiction, a very pertinent issue today in our country. From these objectives, the Kremlin can crumble democracies from the inside out, achieving 2 key milestones. 1, the dissolution of the European Union, and 2, the breakup of NATO.
Isn't that interesting? They only want 2 things and 2 things only. They want to break up the European Union, which is breaking up right before our very eyes. Currently, they are doing the exact same techniques in France. They tried it in the Netherlands. You know, they had an election in the Netherlands that they hand counted every single ballot because they were so afraid of Russian hacking because they had been inundated with propaganda. But okay, so they're working on dissolving the European Union. The other thing that they want to dissolve, NATO. What did they change in the GOP platform at the convention? What did Trump run on? That NATO was obsolete. What did they change in the platform? That they would not help our Ukrainian allies fend off, Russia with, we wouldn't give them lethal weapons. I mean, come on. This was like, the Russians would say it, the Russians would tweet it, the Russians would talk about it, the Russians would broadcast it on Sputnik, on DC Leaks, they would talk, Breitbart would reprint it, the Mercer family. Who was big data in the first place? And then this little company in San Antonio. I mean, micro-targeting.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Man, I love herky jerky. It is just the best jerky you'll ever put in your mouth. They are the best purveyors of jerky I have ever found, but you have to go online at herkyjerky.com to sample and try this amazing big protein, big flavor, big packs, little carbs snack. Now, you know, the bacon is incredible. It's just a big slab. You put it on BLTs, you use it in salads, munch it right out of the bag. I've shopped for jerky everywhere, from supermarkets to gourmet jerky shops, but herky jerky is the best. And this is not a 3-ounce frou-frou bag. These are big, beautiful, nearly 1-pound bags of fresh, delicious, perfectly spiced jerky that bites and chews like homemade jerky should. Now, for the month of March, all the Randi listeners will get a surprise. If you order 2 packs or more of anything, they'll send you a sample pack of maybe elk, maybe venison, maybe buffalo. It could be anything, but it will be a surprise. All you need to do is type in the comments section, buy a stinking podcast. herkyjerky.com.
This is Tara Devlin from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn. And here's an excerpt from my show, the It Sucks to Be Right Tara Buster.
Only in America are people stupid enough to fall for a flim-flam man who convinces them he's a great businessman just by the mere fact he was born with a trust fund. I guess people are really dumb. All the things that he promised, something terrific, health care, winning, so your head will be spinning. Yeah, my head's spinning, all right, but it's not from winning. The so-called president is quite possibly a compromised agent of a foreign dictator. Think about that. Put Hillary Clinton into any one of these scenarios and imagine the Republican response. Could you imagine these average Joe idiots with these stupid red hats? The red hat, to me, honestly, is it's like a less fashionable looking brown shirt. At least the brown shirts, they had Hugo Boss designing their uniforms. They had a little sense of style. That hat, they might as well have a kick me sign on their back. And they're getting kicked. They're getting whipped and beaten like the fools they are. You're talking people that need Obamacare. They need the help. They need there not to be pre-existing conditions for their cornucopia of manias that they're suffering from. And they are suffering because you have to hate yourself on some level to be that stupid.
This is Tara Devlin from RepublicanDirtyTricks.com. That was a clip from my show, the It Sucks to Be Right Tara Buster, recorded live Saturday 6 p.m. Eastern at FYINation.com, replayed Sunday 7 p.m. Eastern on Progressive Voices, or anytime on demand on the Progressive Voices app. We stick together, we win.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
I was asked on a major show, what do you think of NATO? Now you have to understand I'm a business person. I did really well, but I have common sense. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I haven't given lots of thought to NATO, but two things. Number one, the 28 countries of NATO, many of them aren't paying their fair share. Number two, and that bothers me because we should be, as we're defending them, and they should at least be paying us what they're supposed to be paying by treaty and contract. And number two, I said, and very strongly, NATO could be obsolete because, and I was very strong on this, and it was actually covered very accurately in the New York Times, which is unusual for the New York Times, to be honest. But I said, they do not focus on terror. And I was very strong, and I said it numerous times, and about 4 months ago, I read on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that NATO is opening up a major terror division. And I think that's great. And I think we should get, because we pay approximately 73% of the cost of NATO. It's a lot of money to protect other people. But I'm all for NATO. But I said they have to focus on terror also. And they're going to do that. And that was, believe me, I'm sure I'm not going to get credit for it, but that was largely because of what I was saying and my criticism of NATO.
Yeah, the Russians like the criticism of NATO. I remember, in fact, Joe Biden had to go and talk to our NATO allies and had to reassure them that we were not going to disband or pull out of the agreement that if one of our allies is attacked, all of us are attacked. And the only time the NATO agreement has ever been actually called upon to, all for one and one for all was 9/11. 9/11.
Every president since Harry Truman has looked toward a Europe whole, free, and at peace. One of the most consequential people right now who's trying to undo that is a man that Donald Trump says he admires. Now, I'm not big on the character assassination stuff. I really mean that. You look at everything, any campaign I've ever run. I'm just trying to, like that old program of all the Brennan, just the facts, ma'am, nothing but the facts. Oh, that was Joe Friday, actually. But he says he admires Vladimir Putin. No. It's more than the ooh about it. Here's the deal. What is Putin's objective, as Hillary knows as well as anyone dealing with Putin, as I have and the president has, and John Kerry. Putin's determined to crack NATO and crack the European alliance. That is his overarching, overwhelming interest. I'm heading from here, getting on a plane and flying to Kosovo, then to Serbia, then I'm going to the Baltic states. You know one of the reasons I'm going? Is to make sure to reassure those who are members of NATO in the Baltic states we mean what we say. We mean what we say, this sacred alliance of 60 years.
Now it's
because they're worried.
Oh, sorry, Joe. Yeah, because they're worried. Because, the overarching goal of Russia is to break up the European Union and to disband NATO. And Donald Trump's out on the campaign trail talking about Brexit was a good idea, meeting with Nigel Farage, and saying NATO is obsolete. This came right from Putin's wish list. This is like his Pinterest board. And how do they do it? They undermine our faith in our media. They undermine our faith in our democracy. They sow distrust between ordinary people and their government. And they make everyone so disoriented that no one knows what they're reading, if it's true or not. No one knows what journalism is anymore. They think Breitbart, which is a rag, it's a propaganda sheet. They think that, the Drudge Report or any of these, DC Leaks they were quoting to me, CNS News they quote to me. I mean, these ridiculous websites that have no relationship with journalism, no relationship with fact-finding, no relationship with wherever the facts lead. That's the story we tell. That's the story we write. And it's been fact-checked before it makes it on the air. It's been corroborated. It's been, investigated. It's been, put through, an editor and an ombudsman. And if there's a correction to be made, we make the correction. And they don't understand the difference. They just don't. There's like this old saying, why do people, drink, go walk through the desert and drink the sand? It's not because, they like the sand. It's that they don't know the difference. They think the mirage is real. You are following a false prophet, you crazy people. And listen, here is Trump on the campaign trail, talking about fake news and how, he agrees with Putin that real news is fake news.
Well, President Putin and Russia put out a statement today that this fake news was indeed fake news. They said it totally never happened. Now, somebody would say, oh, of course he's going to say that. I respected the fact that he said that. And I'll be honest, I think if he did have something, they would have released it. They would have been glad to release it. I think, frankly, had they broken into the Republican National Committee, I think they would have released it, just like they did about Hillary and all of the horrible things
that
they
her did,
people,
but they didn't
like
release
Mr.
it.
Podesta said about her. I mean, what he said about her was horrible.
I don't know Putin. He said nice things about me. If we got along well, that would be good. If Russia and the United States got along well and went after ISIS, that would be good. He has no respect for her. He has no respect for our president. And I'll tell you what, we're in very serious trouble because we have a country with tremendous numbers of nuclear warheads, 1,800, by the way, where they expanded and we didn't. 1,800 nuclear warheads, and she's playing chicken. Look, Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people, that you are willing to spout the Putin line, sign up for his wish list, break up NATO, do whatever he wants to do, and that you continue to get help from him because he has a very clear favorite in this race.
Turned out she was telling you the God's honest truth. The God's honest truth. And so was Joe Biden, and so was Obama, and so was anybody, including me, who would talk to you about what Putin wants out of this deal and how he's getting his way within the United States with people who he's hacked into their voter registration rolls. He knows exactly who they are. He knows where the swing voters are. Selling your information to other analytics companies who are then pinpointing you, targeting you almost to a man and a woman. Like a woman, an African-American woman likely to vote for Hillary in Philly, all of a sudden gets what do you call that? South Park. It gets a South Park cartoon of Hillary saying, these children are super predators over and over and over again in their Facebook feeds, almost to a person. That's how organized Russia is. As chaotic as Trump is, that's how organized Putin is. So you have this really organized effort to propagandize within the United States, to pass out fake news, to convince America that they can't trust Hillary Clinton, that they can't trust their government in general, that Putin's Russia is a better deal. He's a better leader than Obama. You know what people in Russia make? You want me to make this real simple for you? Okay, you got oligarchs that are worth multiple billions of dollars, and then you got everybody else. They make about $450 a week in Russia. You want to see inequality? Keep going down this road, people. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's unacceptable.
But it would be interesting to see. I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening,
I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
Oh, God. I mean, if you didn't know that day, we'll grade you on a curve if you can actually say, okay, now I get it. But if you still can't, and you like these Trump goers, that's what they do. I know nobody who does that. I know nobody who partners with an adversary of the United States or commits treason in order to get elected president of the United States. I know of no national security advisor, with the exception of Admiral Poindexter, who was convicted on 5 felonies in the Iran-Contra debacle. That does this stuff. I mean, what was Iran-Contra? Okay, just in a nutshell, they sold, the Reagan administration sold tow missiles to the Iranians to get the hostages back. And then they had all this money, and they didn't know what to do with it because it was illegal. So they laundered it through Saudi Arabia, got the cash, and then they had the cash. What were they going to do with that? So they used it to fight a fight in Central America against Nicaraguans, and now we have this migration from Nicaragua because we upended their country, and we're still freaking paying for it. Please. Brother David.
Hezbollah! I'm just saying, wouldn't she fit right in on Evelyn freaking Farkas Friday?
Yeah, she's your man. That's who you want.
Right, exactly. Oh, sister. You nailed it. I had to do that because I told the chat room earlier this week when I got approved time off from working for the man in the belly of the beast that I would, so I did. So chat room, you owe me. Tell 10 people you know who don't listen to go and like and subscribe on the Facebook page, and go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.
Thank you.
I've done my due date. What a week. A week unlike any in this whole series since the latest debacle of November 8th last year that we've seen. I see it, and I can't believe it, even as I'm seeing it.
I know. I mean, listen, that special agent, FBI special agent Clinton Watts yesterday.
Right.
I mean, his testimony was so amazing. It's like every word you should watch, and it's on C-SPAN. You just go to cspan.org.
Yep.
And
that's where I watched it.
Yes,
yeah.
And type in Senate Intelligence Committee Part 1, and you will see, and just keep watching, because he said that Trump and his campaign were parroting Kremlin talking points. They were repeating Russian-generated fake news. And I mean, it's like if the Clinton campaign headquarters was in Brooklyn, Trump campaign headquarters was in St. Petersburg.
Ding, 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 ding. Exactly.
I mean, the only Trump talking point that he came up with on his own was that Mexicans are rapists. That was like the only original thought he ever had.
I'd forgotten about that one, too. But you know, it's the Farkas at the top of the stairs. It's may the Farkas be with you. It's Farkas Welby MD.
Farkas Welby MD. Oh man,
I'm just going for it. Going for nothing, which is exactly what they're doing. I still say it's going to be the reverse of Spiro first, then Tricky Dick after. We're going to see either an implosion, a resignation, something. I'm already working at the marketplace preparing for President Ryan for a brief time because it's so out of control.
Well, that's another thing that Clint Watts said yesterday. He said this hacking and this spying on the American government is ongoing. He said yesterday, he testified he had evidence that Ryan was being hacked, as we speak.
Yep.
It's crazy.
They hack all over the place. They hack worse than people who chew tobacco and then some. But I must give a shout out to my former Congress critter, and you're one of, if not your favorite. The people are coming, Randy, and there is at least one strong black woman in Congress who is going there. And here's to Maxine Waters.
Oh, amazing what she stood up to this week. Yep. Unbelievable. And of course, you know, this is their juvenile insulting way of trying to deflect and trying to distract. They just insult you. You know, it's so funny because I know that, you know, we were communicated with some of these trolls because they would say the same things over and over again, you know, and everything that they say is always super like juvenile, junior high school, schoolyard bully crap.
Playground stuff,
making fun of somebody's hair or we want to see all Jews in an oven, the word libtard. I mean, snowflake. Yeah. This is all Russian crap.
Well, sister, there are still more of us than there are of them. I love you always.
Thank you. Mark in Vancouver, Canada.
Hi, Randy.
Hi.
I have been listening to you nearly every day since the first days of Air America. And at their demise, you were the only one that I subscribed to. I would love to buy a stake of podcast if we could just get over a couple of issues.
All right.
First off, all this talk about Russian interference strikes me as a bit hypocritical, considering that the United States has interfered with an estimated 41 foreign elections in order to secure more favorable trade agreements, particularly related to oil. Most obvious among the 81 was the 1953 coup d'etat in Iran, which led to the Iranian hostage crisis.
Right.
In that event, we overthrew the democratically elected prime minister in order to
install the Shah. Yeah.
Yes, and who, of course, tortured the citizens before he was driven out. The reason for the Iranian hostage crisis was they thought that Carter was going to reinstall the Shah, which is why they took the embassy. Now, according to Tom Hartman, Reagan made a treasonous backroom deal with the Iranian hostage takers for them to continue holding the hostages to make Carter look bad at elections.
Yes, that's true.
But now you're telling me we can't trust Tom Hartman because he works for our team. We're only allowed to...
I never said that.
Well, you said not to trust anyone.
I really wouldn't trust RT. Yeah, I wouldn't.
Okay.
But
and
that was not a personal attack on anybody. And I will tell you this, though. The day that girl, I forget her name, she was a reporter on RT, and she made a tearful, just a massive goodbye. She sat there, she told everybody who would listen to her that this was a Russian operation, that she was being censored, that she was, reporting things that she knew to be untrue, and she couldn't do it anymore. That is a person of great integrity. To sacrifice your own job, and listen, she was not distributed on other platforms. She was simply distributed on this one, and she walked off of the TV set and said, I quit because I will not lie for a living. I will not do it. So...
Okay. I'm not familiar with the specifics enough to discuss that with you. But on the other hand, I would strongly recommend that your listeners check out the YouTube video called Dan Rather Talks About the Corrupt Corporate Media, wherein he describes when and how the media abdicated the responsibilities of the fourth estate in order to prioritize their own economic interests.
Well, sure.
Okay, so
do you ever hear stories on the corporate media about the cost of pharmaceuticals, or do you only see pharmaceutical ads that can't directly sell to you? They're just putting ideas in your head, right? And propping up their stock prices by putting all these commercials on TV, right? But do they ever do, reports on the cost of pharmaceuticals, or, how nobody negotiates with big pharma? In the ACA, it was, a Republican effort that succeeded as part of the ACA that said we will not negotiate the prices of drugs the way Canada does. We won't re-import them. No, they never do any reporting on that, and that's because those are their advertisers. So, yeah, of course.
Again,
but you're saying that the only other thing to do is go on a propaganda outlet? No, you could do what I do. You could do what I do. You can be entrepreneurial. You can say, you know what, this is all in my hands. I'm going to put my money literally where my mouth is, and I'm going to have a listener-supported show. I'm not going to be beholden to any damn advertiser. I'm going to, take the advertisers that I believe in, that I like I love herky jerky. I eat it all day long, so I'll be happy to advertise. Okay, so, or you can say, well, I kind of suspect that this is a Russian connected to the Kremlin opera, but I can make a few more shekels this way. It's up to the individual.
The alternative would be to take information in from a variety of sources and try to piece together what makes the most sense.
No, it's not true. What the media needs to do is the media needs to follow the facts.
Where media groups with ties to the military-industrial complex.
They all do. Every single one of them. You see GE commercials. You're going to see Lockheed commercials. You see Boeing commercials. You're going to see, they all do.
Randi Rhodes is not on the corporate media.
No, I'm not.
Exactly. And tell me why that is again.
because I'm independent. I put my money where my own mouth is. This is my company,
so what
my
you're telling
business.
me is I shouldn't listen to you.
Why?
Because you're not on the corporate media.
This is a retarded conclusion. Oh, I'm sorry about that word. It's just a backwards conclusion. It makes no sense.
To speak to Randy, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Hey, Trump is in the White House. Gold. Yes, gold. It really has the opportunity to do super well. That's definitely one good reason to own it. But did you know that there are a lot of benefits to owning gold? When you have gold in your physical possession, it provides safety. It's a hedge against inflation, U.S. dollar turmoil, and presidential instability. Gold has so much historical precedence as real money that the central banks that run the global financial system buy gold in staggering quantities year after year. Many financial service providers agree that gold is a great diversification tool for everyone's portfolio. If you want to learn more about the benefits of owning gold, just call my friends at ITM Trading at 1-888-OWN-GOLD. Whether you want to own physical gold in your possession or put some in your IRA, call ITM today at 1-888-OWN-GOLD. ITM specializes in all types of gold and silver coins and bars. Call ITM Trading. Get your free gold kit at 1-888-OWN-GOLD. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
Hello, Progressive Voices tune-in listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
January 28th, 1986. Why is that the date at the center of the play?
In my work as a hospice nurse, that was the day the Challenger blew up. Mm-hmm. And I was in North Oakland in a home explaining to, I think, a grandmother and a mother what death was going to be like for their loved one, and there were 3 televisions in the room with the explosion just going over and over again. So that's an indelible image in my mind. And at that time, probably 6,000 people had died of AIDS in the United States, and there was no formal recognition or organized attempt to deal with it. But the day the 7 Challenger crew members died, the president canceled the State of the Union address. It was an incredible day of mourning. And I felt that it presented an incredible and clear contrast in how lives are valued differently.
Nobody can let their guard down now and think that this means the Republicans aren't going to go back at it at some point.
Yes.
They can't really do a lot of what they daydream about doing in terms of more tax cuts for the wealthy and all the things they'd like to do unless they stem the tide of costs for health line, and the expectation is the rest of us won't worry about ours with premiums. But I think the reality is that they're going to have to get smart fast, and the whole notion that Trump sits at his desk and kind of challenges and says, well, you know, the whole thing's going to explode, we'll wait and see, and then they'll come crawling back. That is so unpresidential for anyone to say that, even if they have a difference of opinion in their viewpoint. To have someone act as though it'll somehow be an I told you so if a healthcare system fails is really not what you would expect out of a leader.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
Welcome back to The Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, tail-wagging, backyard-hanging, and, of course, companionship.
And what breed would you say Satchmo is?
I'd have to go with maybe a lavish terrier-hound chihuahua-looking kind of mix.
Tremendous dog.
I'd also like to point out Satchmo's coloring, a white, gray, brown, black brindle, simply marvelous.
You know, it's such a treat to watch a dog like this.
Now, let's see him in action.
Look how he makes eye contact with his person.
That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance, so common with this group.
And finally, the loving face lick.
It's great how he just gets in there and, well, licks.
Fantastic. But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
I'm sorry, that made no sense. I've been sitting here during the break trying to figure out what you were getting at. You shouldn't listen to me because I'm not corporate media, but you don't trust the corporate media because they are corporate media. Hey? All right, Catherine in Madison, Wisconsin.
Hi, Randy. Welcome back, even though you've been around a while.
Thank you.
I've been telling about you. Yes, my head is reeling. Although there would be false news put out by the Russians and talking about occupying Black Lives Matters, that was both of those are totally grassroots, and they're not Russian. And I'm afraid they're really going to convolute that into saying now we're commies and we were listening to the Russians.
No, you missed the point. What they are saying is that the Russians instructed the Trump campaign or suggested that they should say Blue Lives Matter and that they should divide the country based on the cry for justice that came from Black Lives Matter.
A lot of people have asked me what I think about Black Lives Matter. Well, put simply, I think that they do. Goddamn.
Do you remember that whole debate about Black Lives Matter? Do they matter, or why don't all lives matter, or blue lives?
That's what the FBI guy was saying.
Yes, that's what he was saying.
He mentioned Occupy and the Russians and how they were involved.
Right, and he said that they exploited the fact that people were pushing back to the conservatives by saying, hey, you should counter this. You should say, no, Black lives don't matter, all lives matter. Or you should say, no, Black lives don't matter, blue lives matter. That's what his point was.
Way to pit the two people together.
No, you don't get what he was saying. He was saying to exploit the tension in the country.
Got it. Okay. Okay. The other thing is they didn't. Okay, one of the things that they put out was actually based on a 1993 New York Times article. So were the Russians involved back in 1993? I mean, I know.
What are we talking about now?
There was an article that the alt-right put out that was touted as fake news, had to do with Clinton. It had to do back around the Monica Lewinsky time. And they put out all these articles, and then they kind of extrapolated and put all these lies on top of it. And I traced it back to the 1993 New York Times article. So I was accused of putting out fake news when I posted the 1993 New York Times article because I didn't think back then the New York Times was taken over yet, was it?
Nothing was taken over. The New York Times has never been taken over. I don't know where you're going. I really don't understand how you understand this story.
Okay, there was a 1993 Times article, and then there was that article quoted on other sources, and they just put a lot of false
Monica Lewinsky didn't happen until, 95? So I can't even, I don't know what you're driving at. I mean, without seeing what you're doing and how you're interpreting things, how am I supposed, it's like when people call me up and they go, I heard that, well, I don't hear, what you hear. Or I don't know what you read in 1993.
Yeah, you're right.
Right.
I have the article in front of me.
Yeah, well, I don't know what you're driving at, but I will say, just remember that this whole effort was to exploit tensions, was to denigrate Hillary Clinton, even if it meant digging around in the Monica Lewinsky the most painful years.
Well, then why didn't the FBI come out with this information before the election, before Trump got elected, if they knew this was going on?
Well, if you listened yesterday, you heard me say that Comey wanted to write an op-ed piece in the New York Times, and the Obama White House decided that the best way for Americans to learn this information was if the 16 intelligence agencies all stood together and released the information as a group, so that the FBI wasn't out there by themselves. And so the story did come out in the summer saying 16 intelligence agencies have found that Russia is hacking into our elections, that Russia hacked into the GOP but only released the DNC, that Russia hacked into the voter rolls but never released that information. It was out there. But because it didn't come from Comey, everybody pretends they didn't hear it. And I don't know why that is.
Uh-huh. And there was nothing that they could do to stop any of it?
To stop any of what?
the misinformation, the hacking.
So what were you going to do? Tell Trump not to say these things? You were going to go and tap him on the shoulder at one of his Uber rallies, and you were going to say, please stop calling the news fake? I mean, really, what would you want somebody to do?
Couldn't the government hack the untrue websites?
You want our government hacking websites, American-based websites like Breitbart. You want them hacking the Mercer family. Really? So your answer to criminal activity is that we commit criminal activity.
Well, then what's the answer?
No, we're a nation of laws is what we are, and we have to follow the law, and we will follow the facts and apply the law as is required, and that is what Comey is doing at the FBI. That's why you have a counterintelligence and a criminal investigation going on there. You also have a congressional investigation that's been blown up in the House by the Trumpansies, by Devin Nunes, by the White House itself. And then you have a serious attempt in the Senate to try and hold hearings, which is what I've been playing clips from yesterday. Yeah, she has no clue. William in Barstow, California. Oh, Barstow. I was wondering, where the hell would Barstow be?
No, you're my radio goddess of truth and justice.
Yes, and freedom for all, except for Michael Flynn, who must go to jail.
Yeah, well, I have a couple of quick points to make on that. Number one, I used to be in the British military, and I did know some people that used to do some stuff, as Malcolm Nance would say, and I spoken, I still have ties with them. And they're wondering, we got into the course of the conversation of what's happening over here. And, they intimated to me, nod, wink, wink, that, do you think that perhaps the administration, they're trying to set up an emergency administration, they have everything they need, but there's nowhere to, they don't have anything to put in to this particular administration. In other words, they don't. In other words, if Trump goes down, Pence goes down, everybody goes down. They can't throw the nation into chaos, so they need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, as far as Flynn goes, now Flynn's already given has been interviewed by the FBI, and then he registered as a foreign agent retroactively.
Right.
And then he went ahead and, and they said, okay, well, we're not going to prosecute you for this. If you testify, we'll drop these charges. Now, the charge of treason or whatever else comes up, you're going to have to get immunity for that because,
No, if they drop the charges, he doesn't need immunity.
Yeah. Exactly, but the thing about it is that if they grant him immunity, he can still be charged with perjury if he doesn't
tell the truth. Yeah, of course, but
understand.
Yeah, but nobody is interested in giving him immunity in the Senate. Nobody wants his testimony that bad. Nobody feels that they need to offer immunity. It's not on the table. The Senate has said no.
Yeah, of course they've already got it. That's the whole thing. He wants to try and come out and, he wants to make some kind of deal that's basically null and void because it's already been done.
That could be true, but again, like I said at the beginning of the show, only the Department of Justice would grant immunity at this point. The Senate would never do it because the Senate doesn't want to compromise the DOJ's investigation. This is a long, detailed, complex investigation that, listen, the whole story is there's so many characters and players. There's so many aides. There's so many people that, have done, have cooperated with the Russians, lobbied for the Russians, represented foreign governments, there's so many crimes going on here that Americans are having a very difficult time following all the characters and the whole story. And Flynn is one part of it. However, Flynn's already given his testimony to the FBI, and we know that because, Flynn was able to listen.
Register.
Not only that, that was my big clue. That was when I said, oh, he's made a deal. But then remember, every time they put out a witness list of the people that they want to talk to or whatever it is, they go, we want Carter Page and we're so glad that, this one's coming and that one's. They never mention Flynn, which means, if they have already
They don't need him.
Right, they don't need him. Exactly. I agree with you. And that's why the story, people were reporting it breathlessly all last night, all this morning, and I was like, I was like,
Evelyn freaking Farkas.
Right, she's your man. Thanks, William. Thank you. Hey,
have a good one.
Yes, you too. Everybody have a great weekend. My girlfriends are here. Rhonda is here from California and Terry from New York. Bye, Stinker Podcast.